I've always had trouble appreciating 2D platformers, but that's changed recently, and I'm not going to make some grand hyperbolic statement like Sigi taught me to love 2D platformers, but it certainly helped. Sigi, along with Insanity's Blade and Squidlet, showed me that 2D platformers, even retro-inspired ones, can be quite fun without being unfair or brutal. Sigi is a short and simple game meant to be beaten in under 30 minutes, but that simplicity and the satisfaction that comes with the tight controls and fun combat is what makes it replayable. As of my recording this commentary, I have beaten the game thrice, once casually, the second time is the recording you're seeing right here, or will be seeing shortly, and the third time was a 100% run. The game is cheap, only requires 2 buttons, and it's weird and satisfying, so if you've got $5 in a free afternoon, I could see a lot of worse ways to spend your time. But enough about that, let's actually start the game. It's quite poetic how quickly love is formed and how quickly you can fuck it up. So this first level is something of a prologue. It just teaches us that we can jump, throw projectiles, and move left and right, which is really all you need to do in the game. We can also collect letters that spell Siggy's name, which give us an extra life when collected. It's worth noting that the levels in this game, just like the entire game itself, are very, very, very short. But I think that's good, because the levels are also full of secrets, and it makes replaying the levels to find the secrets or any letters you missed in Siggy's name a lot easier. Our current weapon is the default one. It's a knife that you throw straight forward. Has decent attack power, kills stuff good, but there's a weapon I much prefer that we'll see eventually. I really like the weird mismatch of things that don't particularly make sense, but do with your, oh, hold on, here's a secret area. So sometimes we can just bust open walls, and there's stuff inside of them. Just basically hit any wall you see, just to check. Anyway, this game is a strange mishmash of various aesthetics and ideas that may not make sense at first glance, but feels a lot like really old Genesis platformers. Like, there's some not quite adult, but a little weird humor here and there. There are the obvious fart jokes, but there's also the fact that the mermaid has giant tits. There are a couple of pop culture references, some satirical consumerism humor. It's just a little weird. It's a weird package. And I want you to understand I mean that in the good way. This weird, contradictory surrealism made of various ideas feels a lot like older games. Like, it's the kind of thing that when I play a Genesis game, I think, well, this is kind of messed up, but I guess anything went back then. Sort of like Monster Party or that Mick and Mac Global Gladiators game or what have you. We just got a new weapon type. This one goes in a slight arc, and it crashes through multiple things, so it can hit more than just one enemy, even though we only throw one at a time and it doesn't throw super fast. It doesn't go in the same arc all the time, though, so you gotta have I won't say quite a level of prediction skills, but you have to reasonably be able to predict where it's going to land, given that it can change arcs sometimes. I don't want to make it sound like any kind of high-level precision is required for you to aim the damn thing, because that's certainly not the case. You just have to have the general idea of where it might land. So this level, level 3, this is where the game actually tries to kill you a few times. As Sigi says, the winds of change are here. This is when there are noticeably more hazards, the platforming gets a bit tougher, and the enemies are placed in smarter ways and there's more of them in general. That plant monster that just shot a projectile at us, when we throw something at it, it decapitates it, and then its head acts as a bomb, which can blow up other enemies. As the game progresses, we'll see less and less of that plant-like monster, presumably because the fact that its head is a bomb, as you're about to see, means it's kind of easy to kill other enemies with it. But don't worry, there will be tougher projectile shooting enemies later. There are plenty of times where letters for Sigi's name will be hidden in caves, so again, just like basically smack every single wall you can find. This is also the guaranteed way to get a high percentage score when you finish the game, is just to smash every wall you see and collect everything inside. Because collecting caves counts, collecting caves probably isn't the correct way to put that, but that's kind of what you're doing. You want to collect as many caves as possible. The more caves you find, the better off you'll be, both in terms of score and in terms of health and 1-ups. As you may have noticed, we have a lot of 1-ups, and I think we'll have something like 40 before the game ends. This isn't a super hard game. It's really not, but it can also be played by just about anyone who's familiar with how controllers work. Like, I'm pretty sure my dad could beat this game. But there are still hazards that require attention, like those boulders. We have my favorite weapon now, which is a scattershot knife. The idea is that the knife comes out in so many different patterns it's hard to predict. But you can just kind of spam it at everything in front of you, and eventually one of the many knives will hit. So that's how I prefer to play the game, is with this scattershot knife, and just blow up everything directly in front of me. Seems to work. Basically, I'm just saying I prefer it because I just mash it and it kills enemies. I'm sure different people will prefer different weaponry. Up next is level 5, which means the first boss battle already. There's a boss every 5 levels and it gives us a weapon it wants us to use for that boss battle. So the thing about the boss battles in this game is, I'm not gonna lie, you can tank the fuck out of them because you have so many extra lives. I think that's actually why you have so many extra lives, is these boss battles. Some of them you can quite easily beat without dying. Like, for example, if I were to pay adequate attention, which granted I am not at the moment, but if I were to pay adequate attention during this fight, I could definitely beat Blind John without dying. But it's not really necessary to do that with all the extra lives you have. And I assume this is because some of the boss's patterns can be a bit brutal, which would make the game a lot less acceptable if you didn't have extra lives. But not only do you have ample extra lives, but you respawn immediately after dying. So the game is, yeah, like that. So the game is quite playable for just about anyone. And I think the really weird everything else about it kind of makes it attractive, like a bit of an oddity. As I was saying earlier, and yes, I know Monster Party is not a Genesis game, the way this game mismashes together so many different strange ideas and aesthetics reminds me a lot of older games, which I mostly played because they seem weird. But this one's weird and playable by almost everyone. Like, there's something about a mermaid that you're trying to rescue, and then there are zombies, and your character knows the name of the bosses for some reason, and it's implied Blind John was turned into a zombie. It's a weird game.